Hi, everyone. It's Tammy Shiambade here, Houston-based attorney and host of Ask Tammy Live, where we discuss the best ways to establish your business, protect your brand, and keep your profits. I really think that this question that we're going to address today is super important because it's just one that I'm surprised I haven't tried to touch yet. We've spoken about LLCs, corporations, S corporations, but we haven't answered this question. And that question is, how do I choose the right business structure for my startup? Right? Like, how do I choose out of all these different things? And so it's a great question. It's so foundational that I decided that I want to do something completely different. I have an e-course that I created called Elevate Your Business and Brand, Mastering Legal Strategies for Growth and Success, because it really is about being strategic, right? I'm in the business of helping people own what they create, and you have to be strategic in today's day and age. And so there's this course that's built around this, but one of the modules has an entity comparison chart or a structure comparison chart where we walk you through the different types of structures and the different things you should be thinking about when it comes to those structures so that you kind of have a better idea as to how these decisions are made. How are these strategic decisions decided? Okay. So I think you're going to really enjoy it. Again, this is a sneak peek behind the scenes. I'm going to be right here when you finish. So I'm going to send you over there and then come back, watch the whole thing, come back so we can talk about what we're going to do next. All right. There you go. Hey, friend. In this section, what we're going to focus on is choosing the right business structure. Now, if you recall, in the last lesson, we were talking about the different benefits that you get when you formally register your business. Now, those benefits, the tax strategies that we're talking about that you can employ, some other things when it comes to management and control, all of that is dependent upon the stuff that we're talking about in this section. So if you want to access some of those strategies or you want to understand what those strategies are, keep listening. All right, so if you are trying to create a business, all right, let's delve in there a little bit more. We spoke about how it's really an organization that contains and provides or contains what you provide to the world. But what does that mean? From a legal side, it means that you're basically creating another legal person. You're creating another entity that the law recognizes. And because it's something that's separate from you, its liabilities are separate from yours when you formally register. All right. So the things that it's responsible for, its legal responsibilities, are limited to the business and they're separate from what you are legally responsible for. There are things that you can do to mess that up. We're not going to talk about that right now. I just want you to have the concept in your mind that when I create an LLC or a corporation or a limited partnership, I'm creating something that is separate from me. Now, because it is separate from you, it has the opportunity to do things separate from you like you would do. So a business can hire people. A business pays taxes. A business can buy things. A business can sell things. A business can hire people. A business can have its own bank account, right? A business can sue people. A business can be sued. All of these are different things that a business can do as a separate entity. If you don't register and create that separate formal distinction between the two, it's not the business that's doing those things, it's you doing those things. So if somebody wants to sue, they're not suing the business, they're suing you, right? If the business wants to buy things, if you don't have that separation, it's actually you buying things. If there are taxes owed, it's not the business that owes the taxes, it's you owe the taxes. So that's one of the reasons why it's important to create that separation. Now, as you're trying to decide the right structure or form for this person, the right thing, there are two questions that you're going to have to answer. The first question is where you want to form it. And the second one is what type of entity you want to form. Let's unpack that first question with regards to where. You might be trying to understand, okay, she's saying where I want to form it. I'm just starting my business from my house. Does it matter where? It's this question about where you form it isn't necessarily about where you carry out the business, where you do things. It's really a matter of the law. Because in the United States of America, these entities that we're going to talk about, LLCs, corporations, etc., those are all governed by or ruled by the individual laws in different states. And though all the states recognize LLCs and they all recognize a lot of the same entities, they might treat them differently. And for you, you may strategically want to choose another one. Now, there are 50 states in the United States of America. You might feel like, oh my gosh, I have 50 states to choose from. Realistically, most people are not actively considering all 50 states because being in another state just by itself doesn't really benefit you. Generally speaking, people are considering the following states: Delaware, Wyoming, Nevada, or the state where they are carrying out the business, which is usually where they live. The reason why they're thinking about those different areas, right, is because of things with regards to pricing, privacy, maintenance, and defense. Generally speaking, it's easier to maintain a business where you are carrying out the business. There are going to be local requirements. There might be some permits. There might be some tax requirements for doing business in that state. And sometimes just keeping it in that state is natural. So a lot of my clients who live in Texas, who work in Texas, where I'm licensed, we form their businesses in the state of Texas because it makes more sense. However, there are instances where people are like, there are some things that I'm concerned about. And it might cause us to look at other areas. Those other factors that they might be thinking about is privacy. So in certain states, whoever owns a business is public information, whereas there are a few states where that's not the case. And so we'll start looking at some of those states that are not the case for my clients and form their businesses there. Another thing that people might be considering is the actual cost of formation. So in some states, it's super expensive to form a state there, and in others, it's cheaper. It may also be that it's super cheap to form the business, but more expensive to maintain it. That means every year when you're required to send in certain files or pay certain taxes or fees on it, it might be cheaper in one state and more expensive in another. Those are some of the factors that my clients are considering, that I'm helping them think about when they're making these decisions. The other states that people will usually be looking at, if they're not looking at their state, is they'll look at Delaware, they'll look at Nevada, and they'll look at Wyoming. And they're looking at those three states because those states have the benefit of having pretty flexible laws when it comes to maintenance. And so if there's ever something with regards to maintaining your business, or you're trying to defend your business and you have some type of lawsuit, those states have established case law that might be more favorable. Some of those states also have the opportunity to be anonymous. And what does that mean? That means you can form the business without your information being public. So people don't know who owns the business. And if you want to keep your stuff private, maybe you're doing some asset protection, so you're trying to protect the things that you own, you might be looking into places where you can have more anonymity, where you're hidden and your information is not as exposed. Okay, and then finally, again, with regards to maintenance. So how easy is it for me to maintain this business? So that's when you're going to see people kind of trying to figure out what to do with regards to deciding where. If you don't have any unique considerations also with regards to financing, you also may find that you're not looking at outside states. Generally speaking, when I have clients who are looking for investors in terms of series funding and they're doing the large investment, kind of like tech investments or startups, I tend to tell them to look at corporations because investors will want them to be corporations. If you are planning on going public and having a lot of buying and selling of ownership, you might be looking at a corporation too. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we go in, but that's that first question with regards to where. The second question that you have to ask is what type. So what type is kind of what I was jumping the gun with a little bit. You're looking at options like your LLC and your corporation. There are a couple other ones, and we're going to jump into them, but there's two primary ones that most entrepreneurs fall into, and that's the LLC or the corporation. Now, your choice with regards to the different entities that you have options with will impact how much it costs to start the business, what type of liability, that means legal responsibility, you have, how taxes will be charged, what management looks like, and how you maintain the business. All of those things are impacted by the choice that you make when it comes to the type of entity. Let's break that down a little bit more by looking at a chart that kind of explains or breaks down the different factors with each of the different entities. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at this entity comparison chart to kind of get a better idea as to what the different factors are and how these different what type choices play out. in looking at this, we're going to look at these different factors that I said are impacted by the choice. So liability, startup costs, taxes, management, and maintenance. The first thing that we're going to look at is the sole proprietorship. Now, I haven't mentioned that, but essentially the sole proprietor is when you just start. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to register. That's that entity. Remember when I was like, oh, you don't have to do anything to start your business? Well, technically, when you don't do anything to start your business and it's just you by yourself, you are what we call a sole proprietor. And so when it comes to liability, you and the business are one. So your liability, your legal responsibility for what the business does is unlimited. If the business owes taxes, you owe taxes. If somebody sues the business, you are sued. There is no separation. There is no limitation as to what you can be responsible for the business. Then startup costs, there are none when it comes to starting a sole proprietor. You don't have to pay anything. Now, there is something I'm going to talk about a little bit soon later. It's called the DBA, but that's still not an entity. That's a spoiler alert. But usually when that's used, typically it's here and there's a small fee associated. But again, sole proprietors, no fee. When it comes to taxes, all right, your sole proprietors are taxed directly. That means you, as the person with the business, are taxed directly. You're reporting the money that you make on your tax report and you receive that direct taxation. And then management, you directly manage it. There's no breakdown in terms of who can manage it. It's all you. It's all you. And then maintenance is simple because you didn't do anything to start it. You don't have to do anything to maintain it. It's just a business, but you don't have any protection as well. The next one I want to talk about is your partnership. Now, your partnership is just like your sole proprietorship, except for it's multiple people. So it's like 2 or more people who get together who do an activity for profit, and they don't take any formal requirements. Now, you don't have to even enter into a contract with somebody to be in a partnership, right? It can be super informal and happen. And when you do that, you still have unlimited liability. But the caveat is now you also have unlimited liability for what your partner does in business. So let's say you and your friend James get into business together, and James decides that he is going to use the business money to go and buy a Ferrari or buy some expensive car that he and you cannot afford, right? And he's trying to say, oh, the business did this. Well, if the Ferrari company comes and they say they want their money, guess what? You are liable. You have unlimited responsibility for that person's activities within the business because you have not formally registered anything. That's what unlimited liability looks like. This is one of the reasons why I'm super, super, super cautious when people say that they're starting businesses with other people. And I emphasize the need for them to get a lawyer involved so that they avoid things like unlimited liability. All right, startup costs for partnerships, none. You can pay something, but you don't have to. And when I say you could pay an attorney to get a partnership agreement if you want. You could get a DBA if you want, but it's not required. It's not actually forming the business. In terms of startup costs, it's free for plain, simple partnerships. When it comes to taxes, it's what we call pass-through taxation. And so even though there's something that's been created, there's a partnership, the people, the owners are the ones who are still responsible for paying those taxes on their tax reports. So it's not like the partnership has to fill out its own tax return. It goes back to you and you report the profits and losses of the business. All right, when it comes to management, it's still direct. So you and whoever are there, it's 2 or more people who are entering into an activity for profit. All of you get the opportunity to manage when you have a straight up partnership format. And then maintenance is simple. You don't have to do anything. You just keep doing what you're doing, essentially. I will say this. Well, actually, I won't say this quite yet. So those are the 2 basic ones that are super simple. You don't have to do anything to form. And a lot of people who never register their businesses, this is what they have. Now, the next one that I'm going to talk about is one that's one of the older forms that's existed. And you'll hear people talk about this often. And I just want you to understand what it is. And this is one option for some business owners. Now, your corporation. Your corporation is the first one of the entities we're talking about that creates that separation between you and the business. And because it creates that separation between you and the business, it has what we call limited liability. You've heard that term with some other entities, and we'll talk about it, but it limits the legal responsibility to the business, to the company, to that organization, to that corporation. Okay, that's what limited liability. So that means if there is something that the business does, the business is sued because someone came to the restaurant and they tripped and they fell, the liability does not extend to you. It is limited to the business. The only time it's going to extend to you in an instance like that is that if you did something reckless, if you saw the person coming and you poured oil on the floor in order to hurt them, then yeah, the law is going to come after you. You can't hide behind the business when you have malintent. That's so clearly obvious. But generally speaking, that separation will allow you to enjoy a protection. Next, all right, in terms of startup costs, when you are forming a corporation, you're going to be responsible for paying whatever that state requires you to pay. So it's going to vary. Like when we're talking about formation costs in California, they're super expensive. I'm in Texas. Our corporations, the filing fee is around $300 for corporations. It's going to vary. I know some states have them as low as $50. I know some states have, $450. It varies. Some it's $125. It's going to depend, but you're going to have to pay something to form it. When it comes to taxation, your corporation is interesting because there's a double tax. What does that mean? Because you've created this new person, a legal person, that legal person is responsible for paying taxes. So your corporation will file its own tax return. But then you also will have to file your own tax return with regards to your business, and also note, the profits and the losses and the dividends that you receive from your corporation that you owed. Okay? So there's a double tax when it comes to the corporation. When we're talking about management, so that means who manages it, there is a formal structure and roles that are defined for corporations. So you have a pyramid of sorts. You have shareholders. They are the owners of the business, so they get to manage in terms of big level. Then you have the directors. The directors carry out the wishes of the shareholders. You decide how directors are chosen, how they're voted in, what their terms are when you're forming those entities. But that's kind of the next level. And then you have the officers, and the officers are usually employees who carry out the day-to-day functions. But you have a hierarchy of management in your corporation that is default. There are ways to customize it a little bit more, but just ultimately know you're going to have your shareholders, you're going to have your directors, and you're going to have your officers. And then finally, in terms of maintenance, you're going to have more formal requirements under your corporations. This is actually why a lot of investors choose to favor, corporations, because they know that the law is going to require people to maintain it a certain way, and we want to also enjoy the benefit of that requirement. So that's your corporation. Now, finally, let's talk about your LLC, because this is the most common one you hear. And the LLC is a newer entity. It's been, less than the past 50 years that it's been created. But it's really a chance to take the best of both worlds with regards to what you have in your corporation and then what you have in your partnerships and put them together so that you have flexibility. When it comes to liability, the best part of corporations is that limited liability. And so your LLCs, your limited liability companies, take that same trait. They are separate from the person. When it comes to startup costs, you still have to pay state fees. They're going to vary. In the state of Texas, I'll tell you this, our corporation fees and our LLC fees are the same. Some states they're going to be different, but here they're the same. But so you're going to have to spend some money. When it comes to taxes, here's a distinction between your corporation and your LLC. Your LLC is typically a pass-through entity. What does that mean? Just like your sole proprietor and your partnership, you as the owner of the business are responsible for paying the taxes on the profit and losses that has recorded for your entity. Okay, so it's passed through. Now let me say this about your LLC. This is what it is default. But this is where you get those benefits of applying for different ways to be taxed and get to really enjoy tax saving strategies, because you can change the way that your entity is being taxed by submitting an important file or submitting a documentation to the IRS, and then they will be expecting you to pay taxes in a specific form. But essentially, just know that your LLC has passed through taxation. Then when it comes to management, usually you have two options, sometimes three, depending on your state, in terms of how management is broken down. You can have an LLC managed by members. Members are what you call LLC owners. Or you can have your LLCs managed by managers. You get to decide, you get to choose, but this is embedded into the form called LLC. This is a characteristic of the LLC. And then finally, in terms of maintenance, you still have certain requirements in terms of reporting, but they're usually not as heavy as your maintenance requirements for your corporations. So keep those things in mind as you are navigating, choosing the right entity for you. These are the things that make the difference. Feel free to screenshot this and save this somewhere so that when you're trying to decide, oh, what entity do I want to form, you have this handy dandy chart to go back and look at. All right, so a quick word on DBAs and S corporations. DBA is also known as doing business as. You may also hear the phrase assumed name certificate, but they're all the same. And they're not legal entities. They're not part of the chart that we just discovered or discussed because they're not entities. I think about DBAs as really being nicknames. And it's basically saying that this business or this person does business in the world under this name. An LLC can have a DBA, a corporation can have a DBA, a person can have a DBA. A sole proprietor can have a DBA, a partnership can have a DBA. It does not provide you any legal protections. It does not protect your brand. It does not protect your business. It is just a way to tell the world this is how I do business. The reason why it's required when you have a nickname or a name out there is because let's say there is an issue and somebody wants to sue you and they want to find you. The government wants to make sure that the person who is running or operating a business tells everyone this is how I identify myself so that someone can find them if they need to. All right. So that's what a DBA does. It does not provide any legal protection whatsoever. Now, the second thing I said I want to mention is your S corps, right? So people come and they say, oh, I need to form an S corporation. Or people come and they say, I own an S corporation. And I'm always like, okay. And the reason why I'm like, okay, is because S corporations are not actually like different. They're just like DBAs. They're not a separate entity. They're not on the chart. What they are S corporations or S corp is actually a tax choice, a tax option, a tax election that allows you to say, hey, government, can you tax me a little bit more like this instead of like that? Can you give me the benefits of having pass-through taxation? Because I would rather be taxed only once. Will you give me that benefit of doing this or doing that so that I can save on self-employment taxes? That's what an S corporation does. And you have to elect for it. But an LLC can have an S corporation election. A corporation can have an S corporation election. Now, your sole proprietorships and your partnerships do not. That's why I said it's so important to go ahead and make those steps towards registering your business, because then you get the benefits of doing things with S corps. That's when you get to be a little bit nuanced, but otherwise you don't. Okay? Now, that's really all I wanted to cover with regards to the basics of choosing your business entity. My takeaway homework assignment for you is I want you, based off of what we've discussed, to let me know or jot down in your paper where on your journal what entity you think you and your business would be best suited by and what factors make you think that. So I want you to take some time, that's what I'm saying, to write down, this is the entity I think would be best for my business. And I think this entity would be best for my business because of these factors. All right? That's all. I'm going to catch you on the next lesson. Talk to you soon. All right. Welcome back. How was it? I hope you found it to be really, really helpful. This was something that was really built around helping people who are trying to get that foundational understanding and really getting you to think like a lawyer, honestly. I don't want you to just be an entrepreneur. I want you to really understand the decisions that you're making when you're in negotiations or you're making those decisions. How would an attorney think about this? All right. So now that you've had an opportunity to kind of see what that strategy looks like, you might be wondering, what are the next steps? What else can I do to go further on this journey? And if you're wondering that, I have 3 different options for you. Okay, the first one is you could meet with me, right? You could schedule a legal strategy session, and I'd love to meet with you. This is actually the first step for anyone who wants to become my client. And we go through, it's either 30 minutes or an hour, you get to choose and decide, where we start to learn a little bit more about the business and the brand that you are building. And then we can start talking about what that strategically might look like to ensure that you protect what you create. So if you are in a position where you are ready to receive personalized guidance and one-on-one help, you're ready to make that investment of time and money to spend some, to talk through with me, there is a link in the description box below for you. Now, for some of you, that's not going to work. You're just like, I'm not really ready there. I want to understand this more. I don't want to meet with an attorney yet. I just want to understand. All right, I just want to get all of this stuff. Well, if that's the case, your second option is continue the journey of going through the online course, right? Elevating your business and brand, the legal strategies, how to master them. You could take that course. I mean, this is one module out of 6 or 7. We go through even talking about fundamentals like the difference between a business and a brand from even a legal perspective, what it looks like to protect each of those legally, because there are different strategies for both. And we break that down in the course. So if you're more interested in that because you're like, I just want to wrap my mind around all of this first, I'm going to put a link for that in the description box below too. The third option is maybe you're not ready for the strategy session and maybe you're not ready to continue the course, but you do want to stay connected. Well, you can get our free checklist, right? That is the Level Up Your Business and Brand checklist, and join our email list. Our email list is the place where you want to be if you want to stay connected, find out what we're doing. Sometimes we have our live Q&As and we invite people to join that. Our next one is coming up pretty soon. So if you want to know more information about when those are happening, maybe you want to join that, just join our community, join our email list. You will not regret it. I'm not going to spam you with a lot of emails. I just want to stay connected and give you some insights that I think will help you on this journey. So we gave you 3 options: your legal strategy session, getting the course, or getting the free checklist and signing up for the email list. That's all I have for you today. Listen, if you want to stay connected, you already know I'm always going to invite you to follow me, but not really follow me because that is scary. You can follow me on social media. The handle is TOS Legal on all the different social media platforms. You can also visit our website. You can see all these videos there, as well as more information about what we do on the website, and it's www.toslegal.com. That's about it. I'm just so excited that I shared this with you. I hope you found it valuable, and I will catch you on the flip side. Bye.